All right, let's set the scene. Imagine a high-stakes heist movie. You've got this crew of brilliant experts, and they're hired to break into the most secure vault on the planet. But here's the twist. The people who own the vault, they're the ones who hired them. See, it's not a crime, it's a test. And that, right there, is the world of ethical hacking.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if a company literally paid you to do your worst, handed you the digital keys to the kingdom, and said, go on, find our weaknesses before the bad guys do? It's a wild idea, right? But that's the core principle we're going to unpack. So, what is this stuff really? Well, put simply, ethical hacking is a planned, totally approved, and, this is the most important part, legal attempt to find the weak spots in a computer system or a network. The whole point isn't to steal or break things. It's to find those security flaws so they can be fixed. You know, it's kind of like a doctor giving you a stress test to find a potential heart problem before it actually happens. And this right here draws a super clear line in the sand. On one side, you've got our hero, the ethical hacker. They're working with full permission, and their goal is to make things stronger. And on the other side, you've got the villain, the malicious hacker, breaking in just to cause chaos and damage. They might use the exact same skills, but believe me, their motives and the final outcome could not be more different. Okay, so every good heist starts with a solid plan, right? And a plan always starts with gathering information. This is phase 1, reconnaissance. Or to stick with our movie theme, it's time to case the digital joint. Now, there are a couple of ways you can go about this. First, you've got passive reconnaissance. Think of this like spying from across the street with a pair of binoculars. You're just scooping up public info without tipping anyone off. Then you have active reconnaissance. This is way bolder. This is like walking right up to the building and literally rattling the doorknobs to see which ones are unlocked. You're poking and prodding the target directly. And how do they actually do all this? Well, they've got a whole toolkit. Sometimes it's as simple as some really clever Google searches or digging through a company's social media posts. But then they have more technical tricks up their sleeve, like port scans to see what digital doors are open, or whois lookups to figure out who owns all the digital real estate. It's all about building a map of the target's online world.
So once they've gathered all that initial intel, it's time to stop just looking and start actively probing for weaknesses. Welcome to phase 2, scanning and analysis. This is where our ethical hackers start searching for the actual cracks in the fortress walls. The goal here is pretty straightforward. Find a way in. In the digital world, we're not talking about a physical door. No, we're talking about a piece of outdated software, a server that's not set up right, or a password that's way too easy to guess. Any little flaw that a real attacker could take advantage of. Specifically, they're on the hunt for things like open digital ports, old software, and really common setup mistakes. Then they take what they find and they check it against these huge public databases of known security flaws, like the CVE list, to see if there's already a known key for the locks they've just discovered. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the break-in. This is the climax of the whole operation, where the ethical hacker actually uses a vulnerability to get inside the system. But, and this is key, remember, this is all happening in a controlled, totally safe environment. It usually happens in a few stages. First up, they use what's called an exploit to get that initial foothold. But just getting in isn't usually enough. So step 2 is something called privilege escalation. That's a fancy way of saying they turn that low-level access into full-blown administrator control. Basically, they become the boss of the system. And finally, they might set up a way to keep getting back in, just to see how deep they can go and what kind of long-term damage a real attacker could do. Now, I really gotta stress this point. While it all sounds super dramatic, a real ethical hacker never causes any actual harm. They're not crashing systems, they're not stealing data. Their actions are precise, they're surgical, they're designed just to prove a vulnerability exists without actually breaking anything in the process. You know, the break-in might be the most exciting part, but it is not the most important part, not by a long shot. After the heist comes the debrief. And this is what truly separates our hero from the villain. Because the real prize isn't getting access, it's the knowledge you walk away with. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? A successful hack is just proof that something's possible. The real value, the thing the company is actually paying all that money for, is the detailed report that comes after. That is the real treasure. So what's in this magic report? Well, think of it as a complete blueprint for fixing everything. It breaks down every single vulnerability they found. It shows exactly how they got in,
with screenshots and everything as proof, and most importantly, it gives specific step-by-step instructions on how to patch those holes and make their security way, way stronger. So in the end, this whole systematic process, from the spying to the scanning to the final report, it all serves one critical purpose: to help a company see its own defenses through the eyes of an attacker. It lets them build stronger walls and securely lock all their digital doors before a real burglar comes knocking. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. We've been talking about these huge companies, but this idea applies to every single one of us. So think about your own online accounts, your phone, your computer, all your data. If your digital life were the target of a heist, how strong do you think your locks really are?